we've got Rick, we've got Margot. What's your name?
Dana.
Dana, and what's your name? Joe. And
Antonia.
Antonia, welcome. I'm Mikey. So at the moment we're sort of talking about Rick's upset about the Astoria closing down.
I'm still upset.
He's still upset. He's hysterical about the historical Astoria. I'm going to stretch that one out as much as possible.
I mean, Fiddler.
I did go a few times, yeah. That another one that closed down, yeah.
It's like Voodoo at Electroworks and stuff.
You see, this is
Okay, no, this is other parts of bonding.
This is the thing, yeah.
Can I just say that's exactly what I meant?
This is the thing that Margot gets upset about, which is people reminiscing about the old London.
I mean, do you do this as well? Like, I mean, I'm sure I do this, but I'm also on the outside, so I can hate from the corner. Basically, when people get together, it's like, oh, this used to be this place. It doesn't matter if you don't remember. We're just gonna sit here and talk about it. I was like,
But then somewhere new opens. But I was going to talk about something much less modern.
Yeah.
I work in the archaeology sector.
Right.
Now, were you just saying that there's not so much? What were you saying about London and it losing the edge?
I mean,
because I have a comment on that.
Well,
but
I mean,
it might not be relevant because I only heard.
Well, I mean, we'll make it, the whole thing about Talkaoke is we'll make it relevant.
Oh yeah, we'll make it relevant. There's much less opportunity for making money through archaeology in London in the last 2 years, and it is an issue. Yeah, and that's partly because of building projects not
they've
happening.
slowed down.
Yeah, that's right. So what you were just, when I overheard someone saying there's not the same building projects, I thought it all sounds like the same piece, and London is. It's sort of had a glut.
I mean, from an archaeological point of view, come and join in, come and have a seat on the table of chat. We've got Margot, we've got Antonia, we have got Joe. What's your name? What's your name?
I'm Anne.
Anne. At the moment I'm Mikey, this is Rick. At the moment we're sort of talking about, well, the fabric of London, mostly in terms of its arts venues, because you've got the Astoria closed down a long time ago. Rick's still upset about it for the purposes of this conversation. But what about the archaeology?
Yeah. And where I work, not only just archaeology, it's part of the Museum of London, and they're moving from the Barbican to Farringdon. So I think a lot of the time they're just changing. Where is trendy in London changes all the time. But probably when it comes to clubs and that, there's a problem with rates and all that sort of stuff, isn't there?
I mean, just from an archaeological perspective,
we go back to archaeology.
do you ever dig up old nightclubs from Roman times where they've closed down and gig venues have been turned into flats? Did it happen back then as well?
Well, there's not so much I do know about Bath, Roman. So Bath, where I'm from, the Roman baths, they're really famous. And in the end, they actually built over the original Roman baths these Georgian swimming baths. Do you know anything about them? They were quite wild. That was the 18th century.
Okay.
And lots of naughty things were going on there.
Okay, so we think about now and think of it as a
Oh yeah, they'd be swimming with no clothes on and things like that.
Sorry, I would just like to say that's not naughty. It's okay. I've
it's not naughty. Okay, where do we want to go with this conversation? Do we want to talk about what is naughty and what's not naughty? Antonia, let me bring Anne into this as well. So basically, we're talking about these. Are the venues being replaced at the rate that they're actually being destroyed? Is it just a thing that's always happened that actually, that things have closed and opened and London keeps on changing?
I sometimes think that in London maybe, because you're obviously an archaeologist, so you probably know more, for sure, you will know more about this. But for ages I lived in East London, so Dalston, Hackney, that kind of way. And I always feel in terms of real meaty kind of archaeological excavations and stuff, central London would be the place to go, and I always felt maybe East London's just
there's nothing
not
really
as
there.
exciting. So I don't know, because you're talking about Farringdon and that kind of area, there's a lot going on there from what I know, and my knowledge is
okay. Is London kind of expanding and therefore you don't get the exciting stuff?
Well, it's slowing down what's being built. That's the issue with London now.
So you would like things to be built faster?
Oh, no. There was loads. There was loads of building, and not surprised it's come a bit of a standstill because of the very long economic situation that's not been very good since 2009. So you're just getting to that point where things aren't being built in the same way anymore.
And all the archaeologists have got nothing to do.
But does it seem like a lot of all this property is being developed all the time? And I know of like a handful of places, like we have a mutual friend who runs one where it's been like a new arts venue has popped up because there's been property development in the local area. And even though for the property developers it's a bit of box ticking, I guess it's like a double-edged sword. It sort of brings arts and culture to an area, but it also helps gentrify an area and maybe displace the like local communities. It's kind of like
So I mean, what is the impact? Is it a negative, positive impact? Joe, have you got anything?
I'm going to say I'm not London-based, and I have very little knowledge of developments in London.
Where are you based?
So I work for the Science Museum Group, but not in London.
Yeah.
So I work at the Science and Industry Museum in Manchester and the National Science and Media Museum in Bradford. So very different perspective in terms of what you perceive to be development and what I perceive to be development.
I mean, has it got that kind of, is it the same thing in Manchester, that things close and open, and you've kind of got the archaeology of kind of nightclubs and stuff like that?
Yeah, Manchester's got a lot of development and redevelopment going on, a lot of expansion, whereas obviously Bradford is very different. So
Bradford's a bit more static?
Yeah, quite community-based, and not really having the high-rise and the flats and everything else develop.
Okay, yep.
Speaking of clubs, I was never very big on clubs, but I'm just going to make a point. One of my teachers at drama school always said, because he spent a lot of time in Glasgow, and then he said that back in the day, like some years back for sure, he said there used to be some gay bars there where back in the day, the test they would give to people upon entries, like they had to snog the bouncer, and that was the test whether you're gay or not. And obviously some people were, some people weren't, and some people just did it anyway. But he was saying that place was somewhere in the basement.
That wouldn't pass the coronavirus risk assessment.
Yeah, right
really,
now
would
it wouldn't, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he said, back in the day, it kind of it kind of became a thing that people did for around this club. It didn't really matter who was into who really, but it was just like a rite of passage. But it was.
Was it a sought-after job, being the bouncer, or was it like not a job that anyone wanted to do?
I don't actually know, but I mean, who knows?
And interesting. So I'm East London too, Walthamstow, which comes super trendy and loads of building. It's really helped the heritage. It was actually the first borough of culture for London, so they've done a lot. But fun enough, there's this nightclub called the Victoria. So-called nightclub. It stays open until 3 in the morning. But it's the only place you can go drinking late. It is meant to be a gay bar, but everyone basically goes there, so it's open late. But they're going to close it in order to redevelop, which seems a real shame. So it's a part of that gentrification, closing down like sort of quite fun places.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get this as someone that's vaguely interested. Is this gentrification, is it actually like killing the vibe? Is it actually making things a bit more kind of safe and sterile?
I think what Anne was saying earlier about, some places they are kind of conceived with like the best intention at heart, but in terms of like destroying the landscape, it's a bit questionable. And in a way, I think in the arts in particular, in this sector, we may be in a bit of a denial about what is a good idea, what isn't. I mean, making art is never a bad idea in my books, but the compromises that the art world has to go,
are we selling our soul?
Yeah, I mean, or do we just like, not worry about that anymore, and we just, I'm gonna occupy the space the developer has just set up for me because otherwise I'm just gonna be angry all my life or something.
Okay, so I mean, what is our role? Are we kind of making a deal with the devil, Rick, when we agree to go to these places and get involved in these venues and talk to the developers?
I think like it's you can see like a clear like repeated cycle, can't you? Places that are affordable for artists to go and live become trendy because artists are there, and then the artists get priced out, but by then the retail chains and developers have jumped on that, and it just continues. Like you can see it through like Brixton, then to Peckham, then to up to Walthamstow, and it's just like a cycle. And so it's like artists kind of fuel it, but that's obviously not their
I mean, do they get a return from it? Is it worth it for the artists in the end?
In Walthamstow, I'd say yes to an extent, but it's a big process, isn't it, changing an area?
Yeah.
So don't people know Walthamstow, but because of the Olympics, so basically with the Olympics was partly to regenerate that part of London. There was a lot of archaeology, because when they dug that, when they dug underneath there, but it was to regenerate the area. So say, for example, they spent 1.5 million on the William Morris Gallery, doing that up with Heritage Lottery funding. And in that, they didn't before have a sort of every quarter what's being exhibited changes, and they tried to have local artists in there and that sort of thing. So I think it's impossible for anyone to get it 100% right the whole time, but there are usually efforts to try and help the local community, but prices go up.
But I think sometimes what is considered a local artist, I mean, I feel like some of these places that have got money behind them, they make a little nod towards the community. And then maybe sometimes the artists who are practicing their art, that maybe the people who are, fair enough, they practice, but maybe not such great artists.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit like, okay, so do we always have to have rubbish art on because it's the community art? And also, question, does the community art always have to be rubbish?
Okay, well, some big questions here. We've got a new face to the table. So we've got Antonia, we've got Rick, we've got Margot, we've got Anne, and Mikey. What's your name?
Alexandra.
Alexandra, welcome. At the moment we're talking about this kind of, basically it came up because Antonia she's an archaeologist and she's kind of losing out now because they stopped rebuilding buildings, and every time they dig up a hole, they're calling the archaeologists, but they're not doing it anymore. So they're slowing down, yeah. So
because they're assuming that we already know everything about the old buildings, or why is it?
It's mainly because there's so much, a lot of building you now see is going up. It's how much more building there still will be built. It's like it stops, but the point is the volume's gone down to sustain the level of archaeology. So there is still building, but the level's gone down because there's only so much you can build.
But this has led on to a conversation about, I mean, is like all this redevelopment that's happening in London and in other cities like Manchester, is it actually beneficial for artists and the community? Or is it something that in the end the artist just loses out because they ended up getting kicked out and end up going to Woolwich or Thamesmead? Or just two places I picked off the top of my head, but it does happen. So that's what we're talking about at the moment. Is it actually really beneficial for the artist, and does the artist actually get anything from this Faustian bargain that they're making with developers? Yeah, so that's what we're talking about now.
Because I am an artist myself, and every time I try to look for a studio or any space where I can do my art, it was always out of hand.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if...
Do you have a studio now?
No. So I am working back home or in my office, which I think I'm quite happy about. I'm a gallery administrator, so I can work in my gallery, but and the rest of the time I work back home. Yeah. And I think the redevelopment might help some of the artists who can already...
Okay, so it helps the established artists, but it doesn't necessarily help
the
emerging artists.
No,
okay.
No, at least from my experience.
Okay, come and have a seat on the table of chat. At the moment we're talking gentrification. Does the presence of this large glowing table mean that this area is being gentrified, and does it benefit artists? Or does it just benefit the established artists, but not the emerging artists?
Only about London, because I've also been to quite a few of the cities and towns on the coast where artists actually have a proper studio and a shop integrated in it. I could not believe it when I saw it.
Whereabouts is this?
In Folkestone, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, for example, quite a few artists do that, and they manage their business from that space, so they cannot do it in London, but they can do it outside it, and they do it really well.
I mean, in the end, in places like Folkestone, are they just going to turn into is it going to be the same problem that we have in London now, or do you think that they'll just be kind of almost like sort of art zones?
Maybe they'll just be importing in the art into London from places like Folkestone.
Okay, so you think it could be like,
it's an idea.
There could be like an art van that drives the art from like the artist? Will the artist places end up being all around the coast?
I mean, that makes perfect sense, and I've just remembered this, so this sounds like a real name drop, but I've got a friend whose father is in the Times 100 rich list.
Right.
And when the father gave them all money, which was rather a lot, he'd never worked at all, and then he suddenly decided to move to Cornwall because he likes it, and he bought an old wharf, like fishing wharf, and just did it up, and actually for the community and to help artists, and because he's quite rich, he's done it so they can afford it. So I've forgotten this example at all. But that's an interesting example because his father was a property developer, hence being so rich. Yeah. and in the Times Rich list. But that's quite interesting that he actually specifically built somewhere, redeveloped somewhere on the coast in order to help artists or other people like that.
Will the seaside become the new kind of art zone, the coastal artists?
But you know, I'm an artist too, and I always feel really suspicious of people with a lot of money. Maybe it's also the fact that I'm Eastern European, so I just don't trust anyone. Right, okay, where are you from?
Romania.
Okay, I'm from Poland. We're not neighbours, we're kind of spiritual neighbours.
I've been in Poland for a year, so I'm pretty much...
Okay, look, we've got a new face.
I'm coming into the killing zone.
Okay, welcome. So we've got Antonia, we have got Alexandra, we've got Anne, we've got Margot, we've got Rick that's decided to start doing some camera work. Yes, we are recording this, and it is going. We'll end up putting it on our website, thepeoplespeak.org.uk. What's your name?
Elliot.
Elliot and Mikey. And we're sort of talking about the kind of Faustian bargain between developers and artists. You know, there's empty spaces, maybe like temporary spaces. Give us a final thought before you go.
I think we should all move out of London and become artists and just not have to work for money.
Sea.
Yeah, exactly. Chill by the sea.
Okay. Does it produce a different kind of art, the seaside art?
Yeah, this is the thing. I like the idea and principle of leaving London, just like sticking it to London and just moving somewhere by the seaside. But the truth is that I'd probably get really bored because as much as I complain about how busy, how stressful London is on minute by minute basis of my life, I think that's kind of what feeds me as well. And if I went to Slough and suddenly started doing stuff there,
Slough.
or anywhere, I'm just not sure. That is not by the sea. I'm aware of that, but you know, just somewhere. I think maybe.
Okay.
It does impact on your practice, definitely. But at the same time, if you come already with your concept and your work there, like the artists I've met in Folkestone, you don't really get derailed. But yeah, if you just go there, like, let's go somewhere and just start doing art, you will definitely end up doing landscapes or animals.
Yeah, I mean, will it change? Will this kind of coastal art practice actually change the nature of art in this country? Guys, if you're looking around, you're very welcome to come and sit on the table of chat. This is Talkaoke. We're having a compelling discussion about the nature of art itself, art practice itself. Come and have a seat. Yes, that's you. Hello. We've got Elliot. We have got Alexandra. We've got Margot. Mikey, what's your name? No, that's my beer. What's your name?
Alice.
Alice.
Yeah.
So at the moment we're kind of talking about we started off talking about, well, way back in the day, it started off with this question about, are we losing venues in London when it comes to music actually, or just performance venues? Like new ones are popping up, but old ones are going. And then we started talking about development and what is this bargain that kind of cultural people have with the developers, and are artists actually kind of, are they benefiting from it, or are they getting screwed, let's say, by it? And then we started talking about this phenomenon of the coastal artists, because now all artists have moved to Folkestone and Hastings and Margate. And is that changing the work? So that's where we are right now, but we can what's that?
You could go completely crazy. In January, I was in Skye. Yeah. And so it's the size of Greater London, and there's a population of 10,000 people there. Right. It's absolutely enormous. They get half a million. They got 500,000 tourists every year. They told Visit Britain, don't promote us because they can't cope with. So if you want to start a business, any art project, that's the place to go.
All right, we'll go to Skye. That's some blue sky thinking. So we've got Elliot, we've got Alexandra, we've got Alice, we've got Margot. What's your name?
It's Glenys. I'm from the Institute of Fundraising.
Okay, welcome. And who have we got over here?
I'm Phoebe and I'm from Artichoke.
And
Max, I'm from Roundhouse.
Okay, well, look, I'm from the People Speak, but you don't have to really say who you're from, but I mean, you can if you want to. Talkaoke, there's no rules. So, where do we want to go with this conversation? Do we want to talk about Sky, Scottish art? Do we want to talk about... There's been a lot of Scottish talk already, actually.
Maybe we should talk about the fact that many of the studios that are in London at the moment are in very old buildings that are, I think, protected just because they can still stand up.
Right.
But I know cases, I don't remember exactly which areas of London, but they are going to demolish all those buildings, so hundreds of studios will be lost.
Right.
What are those artists going to do?
Yeah, I mean, does London actually need artists, or can it survive without artists and simply with luxury flats? What do people...
I think London does need artists.
Yeah, but what do they actually do?
Well, exactly. They do. They make daily sacrifices for to live their life the way they do. So they maybe not always going for the high-earning jobs, or they're not always, bringing in the massive revenue for the company or whatever. Maybe they're always forever asking for free exhibition opportunity or rehearsal space. Yeah, exactly. Maybe they work from home because they need to fill in lots of applications for funding and opportunities all the time, but all goes well. They get all those wonderful funding and exhibition opportunities. Is that they will finally make something. They'll make people think about things differently. So they are a vital part of London and everywhere.
It helps to make people think differently. Having all these artists around. Do we need to have these artists? Do we actually? Is it just about thinking differently? Are they performing a role that's...
What role do you want them? What role do you want them to perform?
Well,
what do you mean by need?
Well, I mean, all right. I mean, it's not down to me to come up with the subjects of conversation. My role is just simply to articulate what other people are saying. Yeah.
Because without artists, we would not have absolutely any entertainment whatsoever. From the poems and illustrations in the underground to the music in the streets to all the concerts to everything.
So London will become very boring.
Definitely, and also feeding on your idea that artists do sacrifice a lot to create the art. Even if at the end of the day they are not the ones making the most profit, because when the work starts rolling in auction houses and everything, anyone else except the artist makes a profit.
Yeah.
Without them in the first place, all that money, that fortune, everything was not created. Would have not been created. So.
Okay, so the artists are sort of creating value, but they don't, in the end, get the value. No. Is that what it's about, having these artists? What people on this side of the table?
Is an artist.
You see, I'm just...
Who else?
So now I've forgotten your name. All I can remember is Artichoke.
That's right, yeah.
Phoebe?
Artichoke.
Yeah?
I mean, I agree that I think London and anywhere would be very boring without artists.
Yeah.
I think the question that, I mean, I guess we are all in London, but lots of other places really need artists too.
Right,
so I think it's kind of...
What other places?
Sky.
Sky.
Well, there's, there are a lot of places, there's a high concentration in London, and London gets a lot out of it.
Right.
And I think other places could probably
we actually need to encourage artists to actually move out
elsewhere
of
as
London.
well. Well, not necessarily leave here, but maybe to help support what's going on elsewhere.
Is it about just having more artists, or just this having a bit of an exodus?
Oh, I don't think we need an exodus. I think that's quite extreme sounding.
Yeah, well, that's my job, is really to make it, just to make it a bit more. Okay, so what was your name again?
Max.
So we've got Max, we've got Phoebe, we've got Elliot, we've got Alexandra, Alice, Margot, Glenys. What's your name?
Louise.
And
Val.
Val. At the moment, we're sort of talking about. Sorry, Phoebe, but this is there's a lot of artists in London. My name's Mikey. Sorry, that's a terrible omission. There's a lot of artists in London. There's people like Alexandra. They're struggling because property prices are high. They can't. Alexandra doesn't have a studio. She works from home. Phoebe sort of mentioned that actually it's not just London that needs artists. Everywhere around the country needs artists. Should we, like the Isle of Skye, says Elliot, which has only got, it's the size of Greater London, it's only got 10,000 people. How many of which are artists?
I have no idea.
Don't know, but some of them are artists probably, not many. Anyway, but that's the situation we're in. Why do all the artists want to live in London when it's such a hard life?
They want to live in Bristol as well.
Oh, in Bristol, okay, really?
Yeah.
I mean, is Bristol benefiting from this migration of artists?
Oh, absolutely. Bristol is a city full of artists of all different types, but Bristol still has challenges in terms of how expensive it is to live there, and a shortage of space for people to practice. But there are organisations that do support people in Bristol. So there's Watershed supports people with Trinity. So that there is that support as well.
Is it a more supportive environment than London?
I don't know because I no longer live in London.
I
can't say.
I'm not going to address your point, but I just wanted to throw in another point. This is yours, Mikey. Is that I think what would be really great is, because I agree, it's not just London that needs artists, and I wonder whether there could be some kind of like compulsory secondment
like a sort
scheme
of like
for
national
artists.
Service for artists.
Yeah, national service for artists, exactly.
Yeah.
Where every artist is like, okay, you've been practicing for 5 years, great, congratulations, you passed the test. Therefore, you're going to be now dispatched to wherever. England hates Scotland because of the whole referendum thing, and you know. So I mean, I don't know, whatever. I'm open to it.
Okay, I mean, it's a nice idea. Should there be a national service for artists, and where would you get posted?
I really think that will be harder to achieve than actually giving the right to vote to all the people who've been here for 5 years, because the lack of funds. I don't think it's manageable though.
Okay, you don't think it would work?
Also, how do you categorize artists? Because everyone can call themselves an artist.
Okay, so I mean, how do you pass the test of who's an artist? What do people agree with Alexandra that it wouldn't work? Alice, have you got any thoughts on this? No? So we're basically talking about, should there be a national service for artists, basically, and then you get posted to Slough or Bristol or Skye. What's that?
That's a bit harsh on Bristol and Slough, don't you think, to say that it's like national service, you have to go there. Like, I think that's kind of awful, really.
Addressing the point of like, how do you tell that somebody's a real artist and who isn't? It's like if they're offered like the smallest location, the most seemingly unappealing location, if they're a real artist, right, they would know that they can get inspiration from the smallest and the most rubbish place, and they would go there. If they start being picky and choosy, then you know they're not worth your time. So don't relocate them anywhere.
See if they.
Listen, so my son wants to go to drama school, right? We're from New Zealand, so where did we come? To London, because at home it's a hobby being an actor. You know, it's a voluntary hobby, and so we come here because it is the centre, and I think more than a solution of kind of seconding people to the regions on a paid basis, my experience is that artists are really good at their art, whatever that might be, but not so good on the money, you know, raising money for themselves to do their art side. So what you need to do is bolt on that support, whether it's a patron, a volunteer, you know, that's the bit you might need to fund, is actually the support for the artists wherever they are, because they're there, they're doing their art, but they're there for family and grandparents and children. You know, it's more than just their art that puts them in a place, I think.
I mean, we've heard a little bit about what's going on in Bristol, and artists are getting supported. Do they need more support, but also maybe more training in how to actually attract and gravitate that cash?
I guess, like, on 2 points there. I've got the microphone.
Yeah, I've got the beer. He's got the microphone.
So, firstly, you know, there are clear black spots in the UK where there is just no cultural infrastructure whatsoever. There's
Can you give us an example? Or is that cruel?
Yeah. So I mean, you know, the places like Hull were, you know, more like 10 years ago, pre-Hull City of Culture. Places like. Oh, I'm going to say all the wrong things. They'll probably be like, we're from here.
It's okay, you're
places
on
like
video,
Gloucester, Darlington, Boston. You know, and it's about how you readdress the balance. You know, at the end of the day, the reason that people move to London and move to the core cities is because, you know, London attracts pretty much 60% of all private philanthropy. So there is just no support there beyond statutory sources and Arts Council funding. And then on the second point, I mean, I think, you know, it's a big thing when I worked at Battersea Arts Centre, is just artists are often great at making art, but maybe less good at articulating why that art is important. And I feel like the amount of times I've been approached by friends who run companies just wanting support with fundraising, and I guess it's like how, maybe it's less about a sort of post an artist and more like dial fundraiser.
Is it about fundraising, or is it about this question of like articulating your value that you said that is maybe comes before the fundraising?
Well, I've been giving, I just, on a couple of artists last year, just gave pro bono support, just had a couple of meetings with 2 different people who are doing very, very, very different things. So because I'm doing freelance fundraising, I was able to do that and just support them. But then for them to actually afford someone to help them on a longer term basis is what is much more difficult for those projects.
I have a question though.
Okay, yeah.
My question to the artist, because I'm not artistic at all.
Luckily we've got a few artists around the table.
So my question is there a sort of unconscious kind of pushback on help and money because it's somehow, I don't know, sullies the art? Like, is there on some level some kind of wee chip on the shoulder that you're artists and, you don't get involved with the money, and, is there any of that going on or not?
Is there a little bit of a distaste for the cash, or do you're shaking your head?
No, I don't have a comment.
No.
I wouldn't say so. Well, you do need to get cash, of course.
You want the money.
You do want the money, but at the end of the day, you should not just do whatever for money. I think unless you have like a very clear direction where you're going as an artist, you should just start with it on the side and then from there build it up. I think most of the successful people I've known, they've either had the full support to go full on doing that, or kept it on the side until they managed to put in place all the support that they need.
Right.
So it's a question of judgment. Yeah, you need to know what you're going for.
I mean, I get this sense that the artistic practice is a little bit of a feeling in the dark, and you can't properly say exactly what you're doing there, so it's hard to then put it to,
It is a matter of time and experience. You cannot expect me at my age, like 26, to know whether I'm going to be a successful artist, but if I do all the right things to get there and commit myself to it, I will definitely be able to do it. Nobody's
So is there this point about communicating the value when you're not sure exactly what you're doing, because you're exploring, you're experimenting? We've got Margot, we've got Alice, we've got Alexandra, we have got Elliot and Phoebe and Max. I only knew that because of them. And what's your name?
Laura.
And
Hannah.
And we've got Val, and what was it?
Mikey.
Louise, and I'm Mikey, thank you. And we're sort of talking about this in a way that we've now moved on to this question about like the interface. I mean, we started talking about this idea of a national service for artists, sending them to all the places where there is an arts offering or cultural infrastructure. But now we're talking about really this idea of like, do artists actually need support? Do they want support? Are they kind of disdainful of money at the same time as wanting the money? And there's this latest point from Alexandra is, are we actually, we're developing, so are we ready to actually understand how to fund what we do, or how to actually articulate what we do? That's where we are right now. A couple of new faces. What's your name?
David.
And
Andrew.
Andrew. I've just done a round of names. You'll get another one in a minute for sure. So where do we want to take this conversation, Elliot?
Yeah, I just want to make a point again about Scotland. The most number of cultural venues per population is actually in the Shetlands, which you wouldn't expect. It's closer to Oslo than it is to London. Population of 20,000. There's a theatre, there's a cinema, there's an art gallery. So there's art scenes in places that you wouldn't even consider.
Oh, but why have they got so much culture up there in the Shetland Islands?
Because
is it the oils?
No, mixture between Scandinavian culture and Scottish culture, and the English.
So it's a bit of a Scandinavian flavour to it.
Exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, what does this all mean? Can we support these developing artists before they really know what they're doing? Is it about the acceptance of the artist, or the valuing the artist? Where do you want to go with this conversation?
Well, I don't know if this helps. Sorry, I keep going on about Bristol, but for performing artists, or in fact they've broadened it out, we have something called Ferment Festival through Bristol Old Vic, which gives artists an opportunity to really develop, and they can spend time with other artists, and so this is not, and then there's scratch performances and things like that. So, but that kind of program needs to be funded, and so that's the issue of making sure that you can get that funding year on year, and then in order to also hand out just even a small amount of money to an artist, so they can spend it how they wish. But it's been very, very successful as a program.
So in a way, it's about not just going straight from funding to artists, but actually having programs where there are experienced people to support those artists, and you can get involved in a program. Yeah, okay.
I think what has always been really important for me, when I was making my work and then started working in the arts, was that these worlds, even though I was embodying both of them, sometimes they couldn't find a meeting place in me or in the world. So I didn't realize as an artist that I can, that in order to produce my art, I need a whole group of people. And sure, I started from theatre, so of course there's a director, actors, and all sorts of people. But I think, whatever artist, whatever your medium, it's hardly ever a solitary job, really. You need a curator, you need a producer, you need the people who kind of broker that kind of relation, that conversation between you as somebody who's putting their vulnerability out there and makes work that really resonates with people on a personal level, and then doesn't go around, doesn't go hungry because apparently that's the artist thing to do.
I mean, what would it look like to you, this kind of meeting place between, what actually is missing here, would you say?
I think maybe some kind of transparency about, what being an artist, maybe moving away from I'm an artist, I'm this whatever artistic celebrity, I've got my whatever followers and that kind of stuff, and actually talking about who else is in the mix to facilitate that, to make that happen, and maybe just maybe even events like this where producers, funders, artists, everyone who has all these different experiences can come together and chat in an informal way. I really mean that.
Okay, so a meeting place, maybe just literally.
I think what we're actually lacking is initiative. Right. So I know this because I've recently joined this group of art criticism. We discuss on art text and whatever. I should have been there now, but I'm here. Yeah. So this guy just came with this idea. Yeah, look, there are so many art enthusiasts. They want to talk about what's going on in the art world. Let's just meet. I think it's so easy. He just got in touch with this manager at this pub, and they had the spare room, and they meet there every month. So I think we just need to start doing these things that we see there is a lack of.
So just make it happen. Just make the meetings and the rest of it. Was there a point over here? No.
Sorry.
No. We've got a new face over here. What's your name?
Martin Kaufman.
Can I just call you Martin? Is that okay?
You can indeed.
Martin, we got Margot, we got Alice, we got Alexandra, we got Elliot, we got Phoebe and Max, and what was it again? Sorry.
Laura.
And
Hannah.
See, I forgot you two names because you haven't said anything yet. So Laura and Hannah, and then we got Val and Louise and what was it?
Andrew
and
David.
And my name's Mikey. And so where are we going to go with this conversation? In a way, we're talking about having a nice structure for artists to support them. We need a meeting place, get them talking. There was an interesting thing about the vulnerability of the artist, that it's actually a vulnerable place to be an artist. We don't really think of it as that, especially when someone is successful.
Another question. So at home we have a dedicated...
You mean in New Zealand?
In New Zealand. We have a dedicated platform for arts crowd fundraising. So any artist of any type can load their film or project, and then all the people that love the arts basically crowdfund on this one platform. Do you have the equivalent here? A dedicated arts crowdfunding
some
platform?
Kind of crowdfunding sort of machine?
There's a variety.
Yeah. What's that?
Well, there's a whole variety.
There's a variety of
crowdfunding.
There's not one. There's not one. Okay. Anything on this side? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I guess the elephant in the room is that leaving the European Union and voting for the Conservative government is going to damage the arts for the next 5 years. So maybe we need system change.
Okay. All right. That's a bit of a bomb that you've thrown into. Do we want to go down this? Do we want to talk about? Basically, Elliot has said, what about the fact that everyone's voted for the Tories and we're going to have a change in the way funding goes? I mean, we can go that way. It's up to you. My job in the middle is simply just to pass the microphone around. It's up to you where you want to take it. So do you want to talk about that, or do you want to talk about supporting us? Where do you want to go with this conversation? Louise?
Tell us more about you.
Well, I'm just a guy that's been spinning around in this table for 23 years. I do what I do. I listen to people.
No.
Yeah?
No. Come on.
No, what do you want to know?
Are you an artist?
Yes, I'm an artist.
Tell us about you.
Well, I mean, my art is simply to create and curate these kind of conversations. My funding model is I just turn up to gigs, do the gig, get paid money to talk to people. That's it. I don't want to talk about me though. Really, I don't. Yeah. David, yeah.
Can I pick up, we talked about vulnerability, and I think it's a really interesting thing that artists are quite comfortable in being vulnerable, and I think as fundraisers we're really bad at expressing that vulnerability. And I think organisations in particular are really crap about being vulnerable, but it's that vulnerability that helps us get.
How would that
funding.
be helpful for fundraisers to kind of express the vulnerability?
Well, showing that things aren't all right. The world is not all right. Our organisations aren't lush with cash, and we need help. So our job is to find people that want to help.
So we're kind of too much. Oh, we're all cool.
Everything's fine. We've done all these amazing things. But we'll just tack on to the bottom. We've got a registered charity number in the hope that people will see that as needing cash.
Okay, so are fundraisers expressing their vulnerability enough? We've got a new face at the table. What's your name?
I'm Claire Witchbold. Claire.
Claire, we've got Martin, we've got Alice, we've got Margot, we've got Alexandra, Elliot, Phoebe, Max, Laura, and Hannah. And we've got Val and Louise and Andrew. It says on the badge, and David, and I'm Mikey. At the moment, we're sort of talking about this question about do fundraisers actually, which I heard about artists expressing their vulnerability, but what about fundraisers? What about the rest of the system? Martin?
This whole conference, this whole gathering of fundraisers actually came out of vulnerability because it was a reaction to the enormous cuts in funding in the early the 2010s, and people had to work out how to network with each other, but also how to work out different ways of finding funding and support. So actually we've come out of a very deep crisis of vulnerability. We might be entering another one, but we've actually had 10 years of really getting a bit better.
David's point is that we actually need to express, rather than saying everything's cool and we're fine and everything.
Who says that? I don't know anybody who says that.
You weren't saying that. You were saying that we need to.
But people would rather project that positive image and that positive change than talk about the risks, things that are on the line, and that true sense that bad things will happen if people don't put their hands in their pocket and hand over cash.
So do we need to go to the dark side a bit more as fundraisers? There's a point out. Sit down and make a point.
All I will say is that, the vulnerability is a big one, but I think as human beings we get it and we think it's important. I'm making an assumption, but I think what happens is that because people with money are just by definition in position of power, and real power, not just I really understand the art you make, but anyway, if you've got money, you've got power. And what I'm noticing is with every funding application, or with many funding applications, is the tone of the application that dictates the content of the show or whatever it is, and I find that completely unbearable, and that switches me off from participating in projects and going to theatre. I went through a patch of months where it's I'm not interested in theatre, and I make theatre for a living. What the hell?
Because it's all about the same thing that has to be fashionable.
You see a show and you can see okay, this is the community bit ticked off. this is the national minority box ticked off. This is the whatever other thing. It's like, oh, this is Brexit. This is the Brexit thing ticked off. Great. And you're like, and we're not saying anything new. There's nothing daring about it, because if you write something that maybe your funder won't understand fully, or if your point is left field, you won't get funding.
Right, okay, all right. So we're talking about vulnerability in the funding sector. Come closer. Let me just get a couple of names.
Joanna.
And
Tom.
Tom, we'll do the rest in a minute. Kane?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kane. Just to kind of talk to Margot's point, I mean, I think there is, we went to a working class artists event recently, and there is this issue, I think, between the need for the instrumental value of art, art that shows that it has a social impact and brings about change, versus the intrinsic value of art. Art that is of quality and I guess art for art's sake in a really, really reductive sense. And I guess to what extent, if you are, an artist or theatre maker, that potentially stymies you. If you are a transgender artist, for example, who doesn't necessarily want to make a piece of work that is about being a trans artist, then can you do that at the moment? Does the Arts Council allow you to do that? If you are a Muslim artist, can you make work that isn't explicitly talking about or aimed at a Muslim audience?
Okay.
I'm interested in those models of the New Zealand crowdfunding, because I think there are a lot of problems that you've just identified with government funding, and the fact is that as long as artists are dependent on government funding, they'll always be subject to the government agenda as well, and so it means that artists can't take risks. They don't have that space to take risks.
Isn't arts funding separate from the government's kind of agenda, isn't it?
No. No, I've worked on both sides now, and the Arts Council reports directly to Welsh government in terms of arts, but also Westminster in England. So no.
I mean, so what is there an alternative model? You're always going to have to take the money from somewhere.
Well, it used to be that the artist was dependent on the rich man, so the rich man would dictate what art he chose, he's deemed valuable, and the arts market has its own problems, but I'm starting to think that the art market might be a better model, particularly in visual arts, than maybe government models.
So wherever you take your money from, there's going to be an agenda behind it. We've got,
Yeah, but I think that's why the crowdfunding thing works well, because there isn't one person's agenda.
Right, okay.
So it's lots.
With crowdfunding,
so you dilute that influence a little bit, so you don't get the Medici patron or the Arts Council kind of blob.
Yeah.
It is a... Now, that still means you have to have a market. You have to have a group of people you appeal to who want to hear about your thing.
Yeah.
But it's probably less politically driven, and you can find more people who want your thing.
Yeah. So there is the crowdfunding. Maybe it's a solution to this. It's a whole bunch of mini Medicis rather than the Maxi Medici of the what era was that? Renaissance? I don't know. Anyway,
we live in a capitalist society.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, and many people don't, and they want it to cease. If we live in a capitalist society, then without a doubt, if you want to do large projects, you cannot just get the money from the government, because the government's pot is diminishing. You can't just get the money from crowdfunding. You can make a broader range of donors, but unless you're engaging wealthy people, you will not succeed.
So it's about engaging a whole bunch of people. Andrew, let me get a final thought from you before you go.
Yeah, but there still has to be a place for everything. So yes, you do need the big donor, you do need the government, you also need the people who will fund the thing that neither of those other people want to fund.
So in a way, we're talking about a cocktail of funding options, as Martin and Andrew said. Thank you, Andrew. What do people think? Can we have this cocktail, the sort of mini Medicis, the crowdfunding plus? Come and take a seat. Come and get involved in this. Look, we've got new people. Yes, that's you. Yes, yes. Margot, what's your point?
I just wanted to say that as someone I know is currently fundraising, using Crowdfunder, one of the platforms.
Yeah.
from what I understand, and he's not the only kind of isolated case, but some of my friends who fundraise for their art projects, they get majority of the funding from the friends and family who will just look like complete dicks if they don't donate. So they meet the target.
Emotional blackmail.
Yeah, it's a complete emotional blackmail, and therefore, is the art that they're putting out there or they're getting funding for is a good art? Just because, if my mum sponsored the art that I wanted to make 10 years ago, I'll probably hate her forever now from a perspective of time.
Right.
But, we live in the world where we have all these connections globally, so we can play that little miniature, violin. It's like, I'm just making this piece, it's very important, it's about whatever the buzzword is currently. You must donate, and plus we met, so,
Okay, so is crowdfunding simply just taxing mum and dad and friends, and especially the richer friends? Does it lead to kind of crowd pleasing artwork? Because you've got to get the crowd involved. That's some of the subjects on the table at the moment. Got a couple of new faces. What's your name?
Lauren.
And
David.
David, we got Hannah and Max and what's your name?
Tom.
Tom and
Joanna.
Joanna, and we've got Elliot and Alexandra and Margot and Alice and Martin and Claire and David and me, Mikey. Anyway, so that's what we're talking about at the moment. Was there a point over here? Was there a point over? Yep. David?
No.
No? Oh, yeah, this David.
That's it. I mean, I think it's always going to be people They say that the first 30% of crowdfunding is going to come. And if we think about when was the last time any of us thought, you know what, I've got a bit of extra money, I'm going to go online, Google and find someone to give it away to. So if you haven't got those connections, but that's sort of the point. If there aren't enough people engaging with you saying, I like what you're producing,
so
that's
I mean, it does. It's true. No one actually goes, oh, I've got an extra tenner. Well, let me find a crowdfunding thing to go and put my money on. It doesn't work like that. It's more like your friend that you've known for 10 years is doing a project. You want to support it. What's that, Tom?
It's networks, isn't it? It's friends of friends and audiences of your work, and kind of. Yeah. It's not just the bank of mum and dad. I don't buy that.
So it's more like the bank of all your friends as well.
No, it's the bank of the network. People who are interested in your work and in what you do, and if they share it, likely their friends will, support it too. Isn't there like a stat somewhere that says like one of the best? It's probably not a stat. It's probably just someone said it, so I'm not going to say it's a stat.
Just make it up, Tom. Don't worry. Everyone makes it
fake news. Is that one of the best forms of one of the best recommendations you could get is having someone tell their friend you should donate to this, because they'll trust their friend more than they'll trust you as an organisation. Okay, so crowdfunding, not an opportunity to kind of branch out and find new people who might be interested in your work.
What's that?
No, just saying there's not much we can add to this conversation because it's different kind of fundraising for us, but because we work at the Science and Industry Museum up in Manchester, which is part of the
someone from you
it's part of the Science Museum group. So we work in sort of big corporate sponsorships.
Doing crowdfunding?
Well, it doesn't. Not really.
Possibly. I mean, if you're, I know there's the bank of mum and dad idea, but if you're in a community or in a city where people have a pride in what you're doing, then there's a big opportunity there for fundraising on a sort of a crowdsourcing level.
Claire?
Okay, well, we're doing a major project at the Courtyard Theatre where I work at the moment. We're doing capital development. We're really wanting to get local support. We're really struggling with it. We had flooding in Herefordshire 3 weeks ago, and crowdfunding raised £60,000 in a week. Right. And it's like, oh, for heaven's sake, what do you do? Because the government are actually supporting people who have been flooded, and yet, people are putting their hands in the pockets and shelling out just like that. Right. And it's like, so what are we getting wrong with our message? We don't think we're getting anything wrong with the message, but it's that tugging at the heartstrings when you see somebody who's standing there in a pair of wellies. What should we be doing?
Okay, I mean, is the Courtyard Theatre in Hereford?
It is indeed. Not Hertford, it's Hereford.
Neither Hertford or Hampshire, but Have we got? Do you want to make an announcement?
Yeah.
Just grab the mic. I'll turn you up.
The volume up.
Go. Okay, hang on. Go.
Are we good? Hi, everyone. Oh, that is really loud. Good evening, everyone. Hello.
There we go.
That is feedback.
I did that deliberately, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mikey.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Can I have a hello from everyone? Thank you so much for coming along to the Roundhouse this evening, and also for the Roundhouse for hosting this evening's event. This is the first year in our, I think, 6-year history now, of doing a pre-event on the evening beforehand, and we are incredibly grateful that you've all come along. Try not to get too drunk ahead of tomorrow because it's a relatively early start. I know I have to be at the National Gallery at 8 a.m. And there's a small round of applause from Mikey there that no one else clapped to. So over here we have the people speak with their incredible live chat show, Talkaoke, in which you, the audience here tonight, are the guests, and I would just highly recommend to come grab a seat and talk about whatever issue, be it fundraising related, be it COVID-19 related, that might possibly be on your mind. There's also pizza over there, so feel free to grab a slice. You all already are. It's vegetarian and vegan. And if you haven't grabbed a free drink already, feel free to head over to the bar. I'd just like to say thank you to our headline sponsors, Spectrix, and also our bursary sponsors, Tessitura Network, for making the conference and this evening's event happen. Can I please have a little bit of a hell yeah and a round of applause? Yeah, louder! And without further ado, before I do that, I just want to also say a big thank you to the Cultural Sector Network Committee and Young Arts Fundraisers for helping with all of the brilliant organisation for today, and specifically to Kirsten and Dana, who were sort of really the driving force for this evening's event. Can I have another hell yeah and a big... Louder! Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Anne, who me and her used to work together at Battersea Arts Centre back in the day. So, you know, there's a little degree of nepotism there, just to say a few words from Spectrix.
Ooh, okay. Thanks, Kane. Not too much nepotism. Hi, I'm Anne from Spectrix. Hello. We are sponsoring the conference this year again, and I just wanted to say hi and welcome to the Roundhouse. Thank you for coming, everyone who's traveled far and wide to get down to London today, despite the kind of COVID fear. We won't talk about it anymore. Anyway, I just wanted to say have a great evening. We're excited for tomorrow. Really looking forward to the conference this year. There's some great speakers, gonna have a lot of interesting stuff to say and talk about, and it's a great opportunity for everyone to kind of get out of their office, share thoughts and ideas, and think about how we all as fundraisers for culture work together to kind of keep the arts thriving. So again, thanks everyone for coming and have a great evening.
Feel free to eat pizza and talk, and come here.
Okay, so thank you everyone for thanking everyone. So we are still the Talkaoke, where the people speak. If you haven't had a chance to sit around a table of chat, please make sure you do before you go. Now, I'm going to jump in the middle. So you haven't spoken to me. You can now, but it's not about me, it's about people around the table. So how about that? So grab your pizza, grab your drink, and join me at the table.